Hey, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today, let's talk about office politics. Hey everyone, let me start by saying happy Thanksgiving, right? I'm in England, so I probably won't be celebrating, although I might do something special later in the afternoon. Maybe I'll take the afternoon off and go somewhere, drive somewhere, do something. That's if, I don't have any crises or anything that pop up. Today I want to talk a little bit about office politics, right? One of the best things about working for yourself is that you leave all the office politics behind, right? It can also be very solitary working by yourself, right? When you sit by yourself. I mean, you might have a team, like my team's overseas, right? And it can get really, really lonely from time to time, but there's a lot of things you don't miss, right? I want to tell you, there was like one time when I was working in an investment bank years ago, and we were working on this appraisal system, right? And it was like, so people would go online onto this website and they'd fill in like questionnaires about their staff, and it was like hierarchical, so people had to do it at all different levels of the company. But people in senior management, like, they specifically didn't want to do it. They were far too busy to go through and do the appraisals. So occasionally they would send through like information saying this guy's good, this guy's bad, this guy's good, whatever, right? And I had to go back to them and say, I'm sorry, but this is like, we actually need you to fill in the form because it goes into the database in a certain format. Plus, you haven't answered any of the questions that are actually on the form. We can't just say good and bad. And it's important for reports. Everybody in the whole organization has to do it. Stuff like that. And one day I get this call, right, from this. So I was in London. I was at Canary Wharf in London, sitting there, very junior. I'm very junior, and I get this call from somebody in the States, and apparently he's a senior manager. And I guess it bothered him that I didn't understand how senior he was. But he says, look, I'm calling on behalf of Bob Smith. Bob Smith is the regional head of America's territory, and he's really upset about the email that you sent. You should just take this and put it into the system. And I said, I'm sorry, but he has to put it into the system. Everybody in the organization does, or maybe you could do it for him. But he says I'm too busy too, and it was really, because I was junior, he's really taking it out on me, right? And when I said, well, can you just put Bob Smith on the phone? I could explain it to him. He says, do you understand that Bob Smith is the regional head of territory for all of the Americas? He can't talk to you, right? And it really struck me how, the whole hierarchical thing, because first of all, the application didn't care what level you were, right? It wasn't going to automatically work a certain way for a certain group of people because they were senior managers. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm sure this guy, Bob Smith, I'm sure he worked really, really hard. And he got to the level where he could feel like a king, like 8 hours out of his day, right? So when he goes into the office, everybody cowers and he has lots of power. But at the time, he didn't have any power over me. And I remember thinking how, the motivations of the guy I was talking to on the phone and me were completely different, because I was like, I'm sorry, he has to, you can call somebody else, but there's nothing I could do. He has to fill it in. Right? And it's so much when you work in larger companies. If you work in a really big company, you know what that's like, right? A couple months ago, I had a similar situation where it was with a client. I got a call from somebody. I'm not going to say who the client was, right? But I got a call from somebody saying, yeah, this is I'm going to use the name Bob Smith again, because it's not Bob Smith. This is Bob Smith. I'm the head of such and such and such and such a company, right? And apparently he was supposed to be the enforcer that came in and made me do what needed to be done, right? And I told him, I tried to explain to him the technical complications to why what he wanted done couldn't be done. And it was almost like he was so, and this is, by the way, this is not indicative of anybody with a title, but this is just, there's just been a few people I've worked with like this, right? He was so used to having power over the people in his organization that he thought he had power over me, but he didn't. I didn't work for him. And I had to explain to him, I said, despite whatever, you know, I understand that you're very important, and I understand that, you know, everyone keeps telling you, you know, that, you know, you have control over a lot of people and you have a lot of minions or whatever, but the code doesn't care. You know, I can't make this work. You know, if I went and worked, you know, 24 hours straight to get this to work, it still won't work because that's not the issue. Anyway, these kind of things happen, right? This is one of the reasons why I don't really have a title. I never refer to myself as the founder and president and the director of Overpass, right? I make apps. And you know what? I love the fact that I make apps. You know, I make things. I make shit. You know, it's like, you know, I don't have minions that cower at my feet, although, you know, that would be kind of cool. You know, if only I could get some minions, right? I don't have any of that kind of stuff. I left that all behind, and, you know, but sometimes you have to appreciate the fact that some of the people you're talking to, they do have higher ups that are leaning on them. They do have a king they have to bow before, and sometimes that's just the case. You have to, you know, you have to appreciate the position that they're in. Anyway, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, and that's it for today. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.